Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with a review and final diagnosis on this knife, the Zero Tolerance 0850. So I've had this knife now for a few weeks and I've been carrying it pretty regularly. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know about some of the progress that this knife has had. I definitely got a very amazing 17 degrees per side wicked edge put on there, mirror polished. Super sharp. It's really shown the amazingness of this steel. I've also done a blue hardware conversion. I also just published that video, so you can go and check that one out. I really like the way this knife looks now with this blue hardware. Huge fan of this knife. So I wanted to get into talking about this knife a little bit as an overview. So I talked about this in the unboxing video and everyone kind of hammers this home, but this is a collaboration between Dmitry Sienkiewicz and Todd Rexford, two of the biggest names in the custom knife world. Dmitry Sienkiewicz from Russia is just one of the most interesting knife designers. He's got a very unique design language going on in his knives, and you can really see that here in the blade design. He's got a lot of blades that have these sort of multi-grinds, these interesting choils, and he likes this sort of sheep's foot or Warncliffe type blade like that. This knife I particularly like as opposed to some of his others because a lot of his designs have two flat grinds, two flat sort of parts to the blade itself. This one has a nice long belly. Secondarily, Todd Rexford is one of the most desired, sought-after makers that is out there. His knives sell for around $15,000 sometimes. He'll do these auctions on Instagram and they just get up in the tens of thousands. It's unbelievable. So when the two of them got together, the interesting design anatomy of the Sienkiewicz's and then the quality and attention to detail of the Rexfords, it just made for an awesome collaborative knife. They only made two of them and they cost, you know, tens of thousands of dollars a piece. But they went to Zero Tolerance and made a full production version of this. So let's go ahead and break this knife down anatomically. What are we working with here? We have a 3.75 inch blade of CPM 20 CV steel. That mirror finish is actually reflecting off of my blue scrubs over here. You're going to see my face in there actually if I'm not careful. Little face reveal going on. This is a full flat grind with a top swedge that you can see up here. And it's got an interesting little divot right there. Now, you might think that that would be sort of a thumb ramp, but really and truly, in terms of the ergonomics, it's not. If there was a forward finger choil, there would be a perfect area for your thumb to push on this blade. However, there is not. It's got an interesting opening mechanism with this thumb stud. We can go ahead and get a close-up on that. You can see what that looks like. It is screwed into the blade there, so it can come off if you wanted to sharpen it. I will say that it is in the cutting path, so if you were to be cutting something back here, you're going to go straight into that thumb stud. Similarly, the grind does go all the way back to here, but it doesn't really reach the same level as the handles. That's usually not an issue for me. I tend to not be cutting things that are that thick where it matters like that, but it is a complaint that some people do have. It's got a little bit of jimping right there. It's not particularly sharp, but the overall effect of the sort of thumb ramp in combination with that thumb barrel, whatever you want to call it, does provide a nice little bit of traction for the thumb there. Moving back to the pivot, we have an interesting design philosophy going on here, a little six-shooter type design. It matches with the thumb barrel there as well as the back spacer, which we'll get to in a little bit. It is a fixed screw here, so this one has a square on the inside of this piece of metal here. I think this is aluminum. I want to say it was aluminum, maybe stainless steel. I don't actually know. Someone can enlighten me on that. But the square locks into the carbon fiber scale, and then this is the screw on this side, and it does come apart pretty easily. There was a little bit of blue Loctite in there when I disassembled it. It runs on phosphor bronze washers, which is an interesting departure for ZT. They usually use ball bearings, but I will say this has some of the smoothest action out there. Even after disassembling it and putting it back together after just a day of opening it and closing it, it's gotten very smooth again. It is a free shutter. It doesn't fall shut like maybe a 0452 or something like that, but it is very, very smooth. I will say, in terms of the deployment, it's got a nice little thumb flick that you can do, and my absolute favorite thing is the Spidey flick. It is not hard to Spidey flick this thing open. You can do it with your thumb, the pad of your thumb. That's a little bit more difficult. I find that the easiest way to do it is with the tip of the thumb. I will say, though, that it has torn up my thumbnail by doing that. I'm a pretty healthy person, you know, in terms of my overall, you know, vitamin intake, but it does tear up your fingernails pretty bad. So just be cognizant of that if you're, you know, self-conscious about that at all. That is going to happen if you do that with any regularity. Moving back to maybe the most interesting part of this knife, that is the handle scales, and that is because they are done in 2 pieces of solid carbon fiber with this blue weave accent going on here. I do really, really like the fact that they went with a colored carbon fiber. I do think that the blue carbon fiber looks significantly better than the red carbon fiber, the quote-unquote red carbon fiber they did on the smaller knife, the 0452, maybe, what did they call it? 0460, the 0460, that's what it is. That one kind of looks like a little turd. This one actually looks great. And what I did, I went to bladeswelove.com, actually their Instagram at bladeswelove, and I asked them to send this blue titanium hardware set that they had available for purchase. It was $21, and I think that it just takes this knife to a new level. The hardware originally all kind of had an interesting look to it. This was sort of, I hate to use this phrasing, but this knife is sort of like 50 Shades of Gray. And I mean that in the sense that there's a gray to the carbon fiber, there's a gray to the thumb stud, there was a gray to the hardware. I actually have all the original hardware sitting right here. It was black or DLC coated, but it was really gray. And then there's a different gray to the backspacer, and then to the pivot, and on the blade, and on the clip. So this knife, I just felt like it was fighting with itself in terms of its coloration. The hardware didn't match all over the place. It just didn't make a lot of sense, and it was driving me nuts. I do think that the blue brings a pop of color. It brings out the blue in the carbon fiber on the scale, and I think that it helps with the overall design, in my opinion. Now, others might beg to differ. I think that the real problem is that it is impossible to replace this backspacer. No one's going to make a customized one of these. Now, I would certainly be interested in someone who would make some backspacers for this knife. That would be a really nice look. Probably any of the ZT deep carry clips would fit on that, or the standard ZT clips if you were interested in changing that clip out. I will say one thing, this clip is absolutely fantastic. This is probably one of my favorite clips that I've ever had on a knife. It is a fully milled titanium clip, but it has just the right amount of tension. It's just like a spring clip, but it's fully milled, and it's really nice. I am a huge fan of this clip. It works flawlessly. This is as good as a regular spring clip, maybe even better. The tension is just right on it. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just right. I am a big, big fan of this clip. Well done, ZT. And what they did on this one, as opposed to the 0460, they left the branding off of it. I thought that was a little bit ridiculous on there. Now, another interesting piece of tech on this knife is the Subframe lock. This is a frame lock knife, but they put a piece of titanium here with a steel insert in terms of the lock face right there. And it is very intricately designed, it is very intricately done, and it works flawlessly. It is very smooth. It is fixed into the carbon fiber. You can see the fixation point right there. And so you can see where it's fixed on the inside there. You can see the inside of that knife. It is really neat. So this knife has a lot of features. It comes in at just over 4.1 ounces, so it is very lightweight as well, so it's easy to carry. Now, after carrying this for a few weeks, I will say this. This carries really nicely for a 3.75-inch blade. You're not going to find many that carry this well, that work this well, that have this nice of ergonomics, and coming around this price point for this material combination. I will say that $320 is a little bit expensive, but it's not so bad. I think that the price point is justified here in terms of the materials. You got a full carbon fiber knife, CPM 20CV. You've got the names of Sienkiewicz and Rexford behind it. You've got this intricate backspacer and a titanium milled clip. So I'm going to go ahead and give you my final thoughts on this knife here. So what is my final diagnosis? Well, my final diagnosis is a very close miss. Now, that is a little bit bold to say, but ZT always says go bold. So when I initially got this knife, I was very excited to see it. I was a little bit miffed when I initially saw the Apostle P's initial impressions on this knife. He kind of called all of the other YouTube video makers, knife video makers, silly or stupid or dumb for following the trend of being excited about this knife and, you know, gushing over it and everything. And I understand. A lot of people have an initial excitement whenever they get a knife. My video was literally my first unboxing of this. I was actually kind of out of breath in that video because I ran up the stairs and then made the video right when I opened the knife. But it was very exciting to open it because on paper, this is supposed to be ZT's flagship model of the year. But there are some major issues with the knife that I do want to discuss that led me to not want to keep this knife in my collection. As of this moment, this knife is actually sold, and it will be going off to a new home. And I'm going to kind of explain why here. So number one is the blade. The blade is very functional in terms of the swooping belly here, but there's no flat part to it. I prefer to have a nice flat part to the blade. This is 100% belly, but that's okay. It functions fine. I will say the 20 CV steel is also really, really nice. It holds an edge. It came in super, super hard. My buddy who does the sharpening on this knife said that it was a very, very tough steel to work on, but it did actually form a really nice edge, and it has held it. I've done some cutting with this since I got it, and it has really held that edge. It cuts so beautifully. This thing is a laser through paper. But I don't really understand the design in terms of this swedge right here, this swoop, because you really don't want to get your thumb that far up. It's a bit uncomfortable of a reach. I don't feel like I have good control over the knife in this sort of position right here. I would prefer to be able to choke my finger up to really get a good grip on the blade there, but I can't do that. Also, the thumb barrel here is a bit perplexing to me. Number one, it destroys my thumb. Like, my thumb is not presentable because I've been flicking this knife so much. If I were to be Spidey flicking it a whole lot, I bet my middle finger would show it a whole lot. But that is something that has become kind of annoying for me. Every time I cut my nails, it kind of gets a little better, but then I just flick it a few times and it goes right back. It kind of breaks my nails. So that's a little bit annoying, I'm not going to lie. I wish that it was something that wouldn't happen there. It's also not replaceable. I really enjoy customizing my knives, as you can see, but I doubt anyone is going to make anything to replace this piece on here, and they make it detachable, so that's just a little bit of an annoyance to me. The pivot, I think, could have been done a little bit better. I think all of this sort of six-shooter design philosophy is kind of missed on most people, and I think it's particularly a miss because all three of these pieces are different colors. This is a dark gray, this is silver, and this is a lighter gray. I don't think that these two grays match each other. If they're supposed to, they don't. Maybe these are two different lots. I think in certain lights you can make them look similar, but they really don't look the same enough. And I don't understand if these are supposed to be bullets, if it's supposed to be just some kind of barrel design. I don't really know what it's supposed to be. It doesn't remind me of a gun in any way. It kind of looks, you know, not cool. I'm not going to lie. I think that is the biggest thing that people are not excited about. The Apostle P kind of railed on it. He said it made it look like a gas station knife. Now, I wouldn't go that far, but I think that on a full custom, if this was some piece of exotic material, then it would make sense. But this is like aluminum in here, and so it actually kind of cheapens the knife because they want to add these intricate pieces, but in order to keep the costs down enough, they had to make it out of inferior materials. So this is not titanium. This is not something interesting, some kind of interesting material. It's just a weirdly designed piece of aluminum. Moreover, the screws go straight into this thing. So this is not steel, so the screws, or titanium, so the screws that go in could strip out because they're harder than the actual backspacer material. Also, the Apostle P commented that there's no localizing. If you watch my video when I took this apart, this thing does kind of slide in rather easily. I didn't have a lot of trouble disassembling and reassembling the knife, except for my own idiocy in terms of where the screws went and which side the pivot screw was supposed to go on. I wasn't paying attention, but it's not particularly hard to break down and put back together, so I didn't mind that too much. Another small issue that I have with this knife is this piece right here. Okay, so this is something that ZT is trialing on this knife, because in the past folks have had complaints about ZTs that when you put your fingers on the knife in the neutral position and you're going to go to open it, your fingers sit on the lock bar, which they do. And in earlier models of the ZT knives, I remember my 0808 was particularly prone to this. The knife would simply not open because your fingers are on this. Now the 0808 has somehow magically improved over the generations, and that doesn't happen anymore. But they tried to remedy it by putting this little finger ramp here. And while I understand if you're holding the knife in this position, your finger falls on there, but I'm going to put my hands there and then flip it around. Look where my fingers fall on this knife if I'm going to try to open this thing. And it opens perfectly smoothly even though my fingers are there, and that ramp is totally worthless. It doesn't really do anything. I don't think many people's fingers actually sit there. I don't think it adds a whole lot. It does provide a little bit of grip when you're just holding the knife in this sort of a way. Your finger will sit there. But unless you're purposefully putting your finger in it, it doesn't really add a whole lot. Now, I don't know if there was a big problem with the lock bar being too tight in pre-production models and they had to put that there. That's another story that I really don't know about. Moreover, the last problem that I have with this knife that I alluded to earlier was the mismatched hardware. Everything is just different colors, different shades of gray all around. They just did not unify the colors and everything. So, like I said, my final diagnosis is really a near miss. This was supposed to be a flagship knife for ZT. And while I think that it's almost there, they almost hit a home run, they almost hit the bullseye, they just didn't. There are too many things about this knife that are just lacking, and I think that it's going to make it not as popular as it could have been. Whether it's the phosphor bronze washers, whether it's this 6-shooter design philosophy, whether it's this barrel spacer in the back, whether it's the blade shape or any of these other things that I've mentioned so far, the fact that this is not real carbon fiber because it's got blue weave in it or something like that. So really a near miss, but it does have the potential to be an excellent knife. I think that if they were to make a factory custom model of this knife, say something with a slightly set of upgraded materials like the 0392 line was, with a full titanium and some other upgraded pieces there, you know, maybe a full titanium backspacer that's anodized, I think that would have really been the knife to buy. Because at $320, you're pricing out all of the budget buyers anyways. People who can buy a $320 knife can buy a $400 knife. You know what I'm saying? So that price difference, you could have really made this thing a home run. You could have made all of these things match with maybe higher quality materials. Maybe we'll see some different iterations of this knife. Maybe they'll release this one in poop brown carbon fiber. Maybe they'll do something with the coloration of the backspacer and the pivot. Probably they'll just make it all black. That's what they've been doing for a lot of these special editions. Speaking of which, the all black ZT0392 with that copper clip on it that's patinated nicely. So, we'll see. But I sold this knife, guys. I think that if you are wavering on it, don't buy it because you probably won't love it and you probably won't keep it. If you must have it, if you're absolutely in love with the design, if you're absolutely in love with these different design elements and the carbon fiber and the blade shape and the steel, go ahead and get it. I don't think you'll really be that disappointed because it's a perfectly functioning knife. But I buy these knives to share with you and to sort of see if I can put it in a permanent collection somewhere, but this one just didn't make it. So I appreciate you guys listening to my ranting for all this time. I hope that you appreciate my opinion on the Zero Tolerance 0850. This has been Dr. Frunkey. Click like and subscribe to my channel. Head over and follow me on Instagram at Dr. Frunkey. And as always, guys, take care.